Plenty of data from national polls, as well as good old-fashioned common sense, would tell you federal cannabis reform is something an overwhelming majority of us would get behind. Well, it looks like the biggest step toward whatever cannabis of tomorrow might look like from both industry and consumer viewpoints is upon us. Buckle up. The DEA has officially taken the wheel. Marijuana Moments Kyle Yeager was first to break the news this Wednesday that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, or Administration, is reportedly telling the lawmakers that it reserves the final authority to make any scheduling decision on marijuana following an ongoing review, regardless of what the Department of Health and Human Services recommends. Apparently, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram's tired of the rest of these dusty-ass agencies fumbling the bag and told lawmakers the DEA is now conducting its review of whether to soften federal regulation of marijuana under the Controlled Substance Act. And some are hinting at a full removal of cannabis off the list of Schedule I drugs instead of HHS's rescheduling recommendation. Joe Biden and them been pretending it never happened. Removal off the list would mark a significant and welcomed shift away from federal enforcement now that the vast majority of the U.S. states have either legalized or decriminalized. It would solve a litany of issues unique to cannabis, like access to banking, contradictory enforcement policies from state to state, whether or not you can legally own a gun or not, and many, 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 many more. According to Axios, in a letter written last month to Oregon Democrat and current go-to ride or die for all things cannabis in government, Representative Earl Blumenauer, DEA official Michael Miller wrote that the agency has, quote, the final authority to schedule, reschedule, or deschedule drugs under the Controlled Substance Act. The letter was an official response to Blumenauer and dozens of other lawmakers in both parties sending DEA Administrator Ann Milgram a letter back in October calling to end the harmful federal marijuana prohibition and help our law enforcement officers appropriately prioritize public safety. The bipartisan group wrote that rescheduling is an important step in the right direction, but not sufficient to correct the wrongs of federal prohibition or to meaningfully address the federal-state gap on cannabis policy, ultimately calling for cannabis to be fully removed from enforcement under the Controlled Substance Act. And by the looks of that response, it seems like we will soon be getting an answer as to what Ann Milgram's new and improved DEA thinks is best for the rest of us. Given our government's history of political smokescreens, bait and switch messaging, and known affinity for playing word games with its citizens just to boost national morale, I'm not really holding my breath on this shit going down like, I don't know, tomorrow. But I'm sure plenty of folks will be happy that they're at least signaling that an answer will be coming soon. I don't know, though. What do y'all think? Will Ann Milgram's DEA ironically be the ones to deliver us to that descheduled weed for the people promised land that America deserves? Or is it all just about to go bust? I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest out on the street, opening up the conversation. Is it going to happen? Are we going to get descheduling?
Oh, I hope we get descheduling, but I don't see any likelihood of the DEA moving to descheduling on their own without an act of Congress.
Because then they're losing control.
Exactly.
They're literally taking it out of their own control, and it's all about control. I fear you're...
Yep, it's true.
I mean, technically, it's already out of control.
They're not going to not do anything this time, because here's like, just if you look at just the behavior, in years past, the day it was due, they came out with a nope. This year, they came out with a wait for it. So it takes longer to say yes and figure out what saying yes means than to just deny, deny, deny. Deny is easy. That's a quick letter to type out. I think that it is nearly impossible for an enforcement agency to tell the health agency they're wrong. And that's really what this comes down to, is this is the first time a fellow federal agency is asking. Other Congress people have asked, governors have asked, we the people have asked, but this is the first time that their fellow federal agency has asked. And I think that's why it is likely to happen. It's just how and when at this point.
I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen.
I have so many concerns. I unfortunately said yes to writing a chapter for a book, like going into a hard copy print book on the future of the cannabis industry.
Pfizer.
Right now,
Pfizer's the future.
I torture myself. So I literally spent the whole Christmas and New Year's break thinking about this and talking to people smarter than me. And I think the other thing that I've just really got to point out that I don't hear those people talking about, and shout out to Luke Zimmerman, who's just one of my favorite semi-annual brain picking sessions, which is what's going to happen the second this is Schedule 3, before even interstate commerce has been figured out, regardless of the legal states suing because it's infringing on their state process, 10th Amendment argument, or it's North Dakota suing because they don't want it. Canada's going to sue to make sure that they can get into the U.S. the medical grade products that they produce in Canada. And no one's talking about like the international component of all of this that's going to happen maybe even quicker than the interstate commerce. So
you know what, Dale? You're so right about that, because President Trump, he actually put cannabis into NAFTA 2.0.
I don't have.
So it's already set up. Trump did do that.
Man.
Trump did do that. Trump 100% did that.
Back to Civics 101. DEA is an agency that is in the executive branch of the government. The executive branch of the government is to carry out the laws that are decided in Congress. It is Congress's bailiwick to deschedule or reschedule cannabis, not the executive branch. The executive branch, the DEA, is just to enforce the existing laws. The laws are made, let's go back to civics, by the legislative branch of the government, which is Congress. Congress needs to deschedule. This is all a bunch of fucking hot air.
We agree.
I agree with that, Dr. Mark, all the way.
Nothing to do with
Congress is trying to say none of these agencies have power. Like the EPA can't make rules about our water and our air, so how the hell can the DEA make rules about? I mean,
I agree with them.
The whole thing is just
exactly, Dale.
I agree with all that.
Burn it down. I think you guys are all on my page today. Burn it all down.
I'm coming in hot.
Yeah. My question for you, Dale, on this: do you think that Canada is going to take over the medical game if we open up our borders to the Canadian invasion?
I think because America, every time adult use comes in, has foregone paying attention to medical patients, and that Canada is doing the research that has leaned into pharmaceuticalizing the components way sooner, they're going to be first to market. What the question is will American companies be able to continue to operate the way they are? This is between like American. It's going to get worse before it gets better. The one hope that I have is that all of these different interests that don't agree on anything are aligning on one thing. Schedule 3 is not the answer. And while certain, we should definitely have Schedule 3 products available, that's where Canada's going to kick our ass, is that Walgreens will be able to carry what Canada brings in, because like Space Gems are not going on the pharmaceutical shelf as much as we love Space Gems. So it's just they're more ready than we are for this. And so is Israel.
Schedule 3 drugs are manufactured by FDA registered facilities, none of which would translate over into the cannabis industry. Zero.
Exactly.
So Schedule 3 is a non-fucking starter. We've already said this on this program. Let's move on. This is just so much lip service and bullshit that has nothing to do with reality. Nothing. Zero.
I'm with you, Dr. Mark.
Move on. Let's go.
Yeah. Look at this. Dr. Mark and Dale coming in hot
fired up today. We're going to go to a commercial. We're going to go to a commercial, get Dr. Mark some water.